I found her wedding ring in his medicine cabinet. That single moment changed everything I thought I knew about my life. But let me back up, because this story begins months before that devastating discovery, on an ordinary Tuesday morning in Fresno, when I still believed in the fairy tale I was living. My name is Victor, and I've been teaching American literature at Fresno State University for the past 9 years. I met Sabina at a faculty mixer 8 years ago. She was working as an event coordinator back then, vibrant and full of life. We got married a year later, and after our 6th anniversary, she decided to leave her job to focus on managing our home and pursuing her passion for interior design. I supported her decision completely. We had a comfortable 2-bedroom apartment in the Tower District, and my salary as an associate professor was enough for us to live well. Everything seemed perfect. Too perfect, as I would later realize. The thing about betrayal is that it doesn't announce itself. There's no alarm that goes off, no warning sign that flashes in neon lights. It creeps in silently, wearing the mask of normalcy, until one day you stumble upon the truth and your entire world tilts on its axis. Our neighbor Robin moved into the apartment across the hall about 10 months after we'd been married. He was friendly, charismatic, an aspiring actor who'd moved to California chasing Hollywood dreams. He did local theater productions and took on small commercial gigs while waiting for his big break. Sabina and I would occasionally invite him over for dinner, and he seemed like a genuinely nice guy. He'd tell us stories about auditions, about the competitive nature of the industry, about his hopes and dreams. I actually felt sorry for him, struggling to make it in such a brutal business. I should have paid more attention. The first time something felt off was about 4 months ago. I came home early from campus one Wednesday. My afternoon seminar had been canceled because half the students were sick with some flu that was going around. When I walked into our apartment, Sabina seemed startled. Not guilty, just surprised. She was sitting on the couch with her laptop, and she closed it quickly. "You're home early," she said, smiling, but there was something in her eyes I couldn't quite read. "Seminar got canceled," I replied, dropping my messenger bag by the door. "What are you working on?" "Just browsing design blogs," she said smoothly. "I'm thinking about redoing our bedroom." I didn't think much of it then. Why would I? We were happy. We had date nights every Friday. We talked about our future, about eventually buying a house, maybe starting a family. She was my best friend, my partner, my everything. But looking back now, I can see all the small moments I missed. The way she'd angle her phone away from me when texting. The new perfume she started wearing. The fact that she seemed to do her grocery shopping at oddly specific times, usually between 2 and 4 p.m., when she knew I'd be teaching my Victorian literature class. 3 months ago, Robin mentioned during a casual hallway conversation that he'd been taking up gardening. "Helps with stress," he said. "Sabina actually gave me some great tips about which plants work well in indirect sunlight." "When did she tell you that?" I asked, surprised because I didn't remember Sabina mentioning that she'd been talking to him recently. "Oh, she stopped by last week when you were at that conference in Sacramento," he said casually. "She brought me some banana bread. Your wife's an amazing baker, man." I had been at a conference in Sacramento, 2 nights away for an academic symposium, and Sabina had been socializing with our neighbor, bringing him baked goods. "That was nice of her," I said, pushing down the small knot of unease in my stomach. The knot grew tighter 2 months ago when I found a parking receipt in Sabina's coat pocket while looking for her car keys. She'd been to a part of town where there was nothing but residential neighborhoods, nowhere she'd normally go. When I asked her about it, she seemed momentarily confused before saying she'd gotten lost trying to find a new craft store someone had recommended. I wanted to believe her. God, how I wanted to believe her. Last month, I started noticing that Robin's schedule seemed to align suspiciously well with mine. He'd leave his apartment around the same time I left for campus, returning about 20 minutes later. I'd see him in the parking lot sometimes, getting into his car right after I'd driven away, then coming back shortly after. The paranoia was eating at me, but I felt crazy for even having these thoughts. This was Sabina. My Sabina. The woman who'd promised to love me forever, who'd built a life with me, who looked at me like I was her entire world. 2 weeks ago, I decided to test my suspicions, and I hated myself for it. I told Sabina I had a full day of back-to-back meetings and wouldn't be home until after 6. Instead, I only went to my morning class, then came back to the neighborhood around 11. I parked 2 blocks away and walked back. I sat in a coffee shop across the street with a view of our building. At 11:30, Robin's door opened. But he didn't leave. Sabina slipped out of our apartment and disappeared into his. My hands were shaking so badly I spilled my coffee. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. I sat there for 3 hours, watching, waiting, hoping I was wrong, praying I was misunderstanding what I was seeing. She emerged at 2:47 p.m., her hair slightly mussed, wearing different clothes than she'd had on that morning. I drove around for hours that day, trying to process what I'd seen. Maybe they were just talking. Maybe she was helping him rehearse lines. Maybe there was a completely innocent explanation. But deep down I knew. I knew. For the next week, I was a ghost in my own life. I went through the motions, teaching my classes, grading papers, coming home to Sabina's smiles and her questions about my day. Every kiss felt like a lie. Every "I love you" felt like a knife twisting deeper. I needed proof. I needed to see it with my own eyes, as much as the thought destroyed me. Yesterday, I told Sabina I had to drive to San Francisco for an emergency meeting with a publisher interested in my research. I'd be gone overnight. She seemed disappointed, kissing me goodbye at the door, telling me to drive safely, to text her when I got there. I drove to a hotel 15 minutes away. I checked in, I sat in the room, and I waited until evening. Then I drove back. At 8 p.m., I parked in the guest lot where my car wouldn't be visible from our apartment. I walked up the back stairs, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst through my chest. Robin's apartment was on the same floor as ours, just across the hall. His door was unlocked. I pushed it open slowly, quietly. The apartment was dimly lit, music playing softly from somewhere deeper inside. I heard laughter, Sabina's laughter, coming from the bedroom. I walked down his short hallway, each step feeling like I was walking toward the edge of a cliff. The bedroom door was partially open, and through the gap, I could see them. My wife. In another man's arms. In another man's bed. The sound that came out of me wasn't human. It was something primal, something broken and raw, and full of 7 years of love turning instantly to ash. What the hell is this? I roared, slamming the door open so hard it bounced off the wall. Sabina screamed, scrambling to pull the sheets around herself. Robin jumped up, his face going pale. "Victor! Oh my God, Victor, I can explain," Sabina started, but I couldn't hear her over the rushing sound in my ears. 7 years. I shouted. 7 years, Sabina. How long? How long has this been going on? Victor, please just listen. How long? My voice cracked, and I hated how much pain was in it, how vulnerable I sounded when all I wanted was to be angry. 6 months, she whispered, and that number hit me like a physical blow. 6 months. Half a year of lies. Half a year of her coming home to me, sleeping in our bed, planning our future, while she was with him. Robin had the audacity to step forward. "Look, man, we didn't mean for this to happen." "You didn't mean for this to happen?" I lunged at him, and I'm not proud of what I did next. I shoved him, hard, and he stumbled backward into his dresser. "You lived across the hall. You ate at my table. I treated you like a friend. Victor, don't." Sabina jumped out of the bed, wrapped in the sheet, trying to get between us. "Don't blame him, this is on me." "Oh, I have plenty of blame for both of you," I said, my voice dropping to something cold and deadly quiet. "Stay away from me. Both of you." I turned and walked out, my vision blurring with tears I refused to let fall until I was out of that apartment. I heard Sabina calling after me, heard her footsteps in the hallway, but I kept walking. I got in my car and I drove. I drove to the river, and I sat there in the dark, my whole body shaking with rage and grief and betrayal. Everything I thought I knew was a lie. Everything I'd built was sand, and the tide had just come in and washed it all away. Around midnight, I checked into the hotel I'd originally booked, the one I was supposed to be using as my alibi for being in San Francisco. The irony wasn't lost on me. I turned off my phone after seeing 47 missed calls and over 100 texts from Sabina. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw them together. By morning, something had shifted inside me. The shock had worn off, and in its place was something colder. Something calculating. Sabina had made her choice. Now I would make mine. I drove back to Fresno mid-morning and went straight to see a lawyer. Mark Patterson had gone to law school with my older brother, and I trusted him. I told him everything. "California is a no-fault divorce state," he explained. "The affair doesn't really impact the division of assets legally, but we can work with that to our advantage in other ways. First things first, do you own or rent?" "We rent the apartment. It's a month-to-month lease." "Good. Any shared accounts?" "One checking account and one savings account. Both in both our names." Here's what you're going to do, Mark said, leaning forward. Don't let her know you've contacted a lawyer. Act like you're devastated, but willing to work through it. In the meantime, we're going to quietly start moving assets. The money in the joint accounts, we'll document everything, but we're going to make sure it's protected. And we're going to be smart about this. Over the next week, I was an actor worthy of an Oscar. I moved back into the apartment. I had a breakdown where I cried and told Sabina I didn't know if I could forgive her, but that I wanted to try. She cried too, apologizing over and over, swearing it was over with Robin, that she'd made a terrible mistake, that she loved me and only me. All lies, of course. I'd see her texting someone and quickly putting her phone away. I'd hear her making hushed phone calls from the bathroom. She thought she was being careful. She had no idea I was 3 steps ahead. Through Mark, I'd hired a private investigator, not to prove the affair since I'd witnessed it myself, but to document everything else. Bank records, credit card statements, every detail of our shared life. And what we found was interesting. Remember that savings account? The one I was saving money for to make the down payment on a house. Over the past 6 months, there had been several withdrawals. Small enough not to be immediately noticeable, but they added up. $2,800 total. When I asked Sabina about them, she claimed they were for household expenses she'd forgotten to mention. The investigator traced the money. Robin had suddenly been able to afford new headshots, had paid for an expensive acting workshop in Los Angeles, had bought new furniture for his apartment. My money. Sabina financed her affair with the money I had saved. Money that I had worked hard to earn. That discovery crystallized everything for me. This wasn't just about betrayal. This was theft. This was calculated deception. 2 weeks after catching them together, I told Sabina I wanted to try couples therapy. She jumped at the idea, probably thinking she was getting away with everything. I even suggested we renew our vows after we worked through our issues. She actually cried happy tears. Meanwhile, I was systematically documenting everything. I'd opened a new bank account in just my name and had my university paycheck rerouted there. I'd quietly moved our savings, minus what she'd stolen plus interest, into a protected account. I'd photographed every piece of furniture, every appliance, everything we owned. I'd secured copies of all our important documents. And then I discovered something that made everything fall perfectly into place. I needed to fix a faucet that had been leaking for a long time, and I remembered that Robin had borrowed some tools from me a few months ago and never returned them. Sabina wasn't home. She had gone to what she called yoga class, so I seized the moment. I took the spare key Robin had given me a few weeks ago because he needed to meet a courier when he wasn't home, and he probably forgot that I still had the key. Sabina had obviously given him a key to our apartment, so it seemed fair. I let myself into Robin's apartment, found my tools in his kitchen drawer, and was about to leave when something caught my eye on his bathroom counter. I'd gone in to wash my hands, and there, sitting next to his electric razor, was a ring. Sabina's wedding ring. Not similar to it. Not one that looked like it. The ring I'd put on her finger 7 years ago, with the inscription inside that read, "Forever starts today." She'd been taking it off when she came over here. Taking off the symbol of our marriage before climbing into his bed. I took a photo of it. Then I took the ring. Evidence. That night, I asked Sabina where her ring was. She'd looked down at her hand with perfect surprise and panic. Oh my God, I must have taken it off when I was baking earlier. I was kneading dough and... Check the kitchen, I suggested mildly. I'm sure it's there. I watched her tear apart the kitchen looking for it, genuine distress on her face. Not because she'd lost our wedding ring, but because she'd lost track of her lie. The next morning, I put my plan into action. I called Sabina from campus. Hey, I've been thinking, maybe we should get away for a few days. Clear our heads. What if we drove up to Lake Tahoe this weekend? Like we used to when we first got married. She hesitated, probably thinking about Robin, but then agreed. That sounds wonderful, Victor. I think we really need that. Great. Can you start packing tonight? I'll see if I can move my Friday classes to Wednesday. Of course, baby. I love you. I love you too, I lied. That afternoon, I gave my department head a heads up that I needed to take a personal leave, 2 weeks minimum. I'd already arranged for my classes to be covered. Then I met with Mark Patterson one final time. Everything's ready, he told me. The divorce papers are drawn up. Based on the evidence we've gathered, the theft of marital funds, the documentation you've provided, the timeline, we're in a strong position. And since she's not employed and you can prove she was using marital assets for the affair, The judge will likely rule in your favor on the property division. What about the apartment? The lease is in both names, but I've already spoken to your landlord. He's agreed that once the divorce is filed, he'll allow you to sign a new lease in just your name, or release you from the lease entirely if you want to move. Either way, Sabina will have to find somewhere else to live. Perfect. Friday afternoon, I came home early. Sabina was in the bedroom, supposedly packing for our trip. I could hear her on the phone, her voice low. I know, it's just a few days. I'll text you when I can. Yes, I miss you too. I cleared my throat loudly, and she jumped, nearly dropping her phone. I have to go, she said quickly into the phone. Then to me, you scared me. Who was that? My mom, she said without missing a beat. Another lie. Sabina, I said calmly, we need to talk. Something in my voice must have tipped her off, because her face went pale. About what? I pulled out an envelope from my bag. I'm not an idiot. Victor, I found your ring. In Robin's apartment. In his bathroom, specifically. She opened her mouth, but no sound came out. I know you've been stealing from our savings to fund his acting career. I know you've been with him the entire time you've been pretending to work on our marriage. I know everything, Sabina. Tears started streaming down her face. Victor, please. These are divorce papers, I said, holding up the envelope. You're being served. I've already moved my money to a separate account. I've already spoken to the landlord about removing you from the lease. I've already arranged for my brother to come help you move your things out by Monday. You have the weekend to figure out where you're going to live. You can't just kick me out, she sobbed. Actually, I can. The lease allows for it in cases of material breach, and stealing from our joint account counts. You'll get what's legally yours in the divorce settlement, minus what you stole, which I can prove. But this apartment, the furniture we bought together, all of it, you gave that up when you decided to betray everything we built. Victor, please, I made a mistake. I love you. No, I said quietly. You don't. You never did. People who love each other don't do what you did. They don't lie every single day for 6 months. They don't steal from the person they claim to love. They don't take off their wedding ring to sleep with someone else. I set the envelope on the dresser and turned to leave. Where are you going? She asked desperately. I'm actually going to Lake Tahoe. I booked a cabin for one. I'm taking that trip to clear my head, like I said. You have until Monday to be out. All your stuff, everything that's solely yours, take it. The rest stays. What about Robin? She asked, and I almost laughed at the audacity. What about him? You think he's going to take you in? You think this is going to be some great romance now that you're free? He's an unemployed actor who was happy to sleep with a married woman. He was using you as much as you were using our marriage as a safety net. But hey, you're about to find out what life looks like without that net. Good luck. I walked out of our apartment for the last time as a married man living there. As I passed Robin's door, I could hear movement inside. I pulled out my phone and sent him a text from a burner number I'd set up. Stay away from her. You got what you wanted. Now deal with the consequences. The drive to Lake Tahoe was surreal. I should have felt devastated. Instead, I felt free, lighter than I'd felt in months. I spent 3 days in that cabin, hiking, reading, sitting by the lake, and just breathing. No texts from Sabina got through. I'd blocked her number. My brother kept me updated. She'd moved out on Sunday, taking her clothes and personal items. She'd tried to take some of the furniture, but he'd stopped her with the inventory I'd provided and the photos proving we'd purchased everything together with joint funds. She'd gone to Robin's apartment. My brother had seen her showing up with suitcases. When I returned to Fresno on Monday, the apartment felt different. Empty of her presence, but somehow fuller. I'd reclaimed my space, my life, my dignity. The divorce proceedings moved quickly. Sabina tried to fight the asset division, but with the evidence of theft and Mark's aggressive representation, she had no leg to stand on. California might be no fault, but judges still don't look kindly on stealing from joint accounts. I got the security deposit we'd put down on the apartment. I got my furniture. I got every penny of our savings minus what she'd stolen, which she was ordered to repay. Her lawyer tried to argue for alimony since she'd left her job, but Mark demolished that argument by proving she'd left by choice to pursue personal interests and had been employable the entire time, but chose not to work. The final divorce decree came through 3 months after I'd served her those papers. 7 years of marriage dissolved in a fraction of the time we'd been together. I didn't hear from Sabina directly during those months. But Fresno's a small enough city that word gets around. Through mutual friends, most of whom had sided with me once they knew what happened, I heard that she and Robin were together. She'd moved into his apartment officially. It lasted 6 weeks. Apparently, the fantasy of their affair couldn't survive the reality of actual life together. Without the excitement of sneaking around, without the forbidden nature of their relationship, there was nothing left. Plus, Robin realized pretty quickly that having a girlfriend meant he couldn't pursue other women, and he'd apparently been doing plenty of that even while sleeping with Sabina. She caught him with another woman, someone from one of his acting classes. The irony would have been funny if it wasn't so pathetic. Sabina moved back in with her parents in Clovis, about 20 minutes away. I heard she got a job as a receptionist at a dental office. Not out of anger, that had faded months ago, but because there was nothing to say. She'd made her choices, and I'd made mine. We'd both have to live with the consequences. A year has passed since I found that ring in Robin's bathroom. I'm still teaching at Fresno State. I started dating someone a few months ago, a fellow professor in the history department named Rachel. It's early, and we're taking things slow, but there's something genuine there. Something honest. I saw Sabina once, about 3 weeks ago. I was at a coffee shop grading papers when she walked in with someone I didn't recognize. She looked older, tired in a way that wasn't just physical. She saw me, and for a moment, we just looked at each other. Then she looked away, got her coffee, and left. I went back to my papers. Sometimes I think about those 7 years, about whether any of it was real. I've decided that some of it probably was, at least in the beginning. People change. Feelings change. But how you handle those changes, that's what defines your character. Sabina chose deception and betrayal. I chose honesty and self-respect. I don't hate her anymore. I don't really feel anything for her at all. She's just someone I used to know, someone who taught me valuable lessons about trust, about paying attention to red flags, about not losing yourself in someone else. And Robin? Last I heard, he'd moved to Los Angeles, still chasing that Hollywood dream. Still waiting for his big break. Still thinking his charm and good looks would carry him through life. As for me, I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. Teaching students about American literature, about the great stories of human triumph and failure, love and loss, justice and revenge. Living my life on my own terms. Sabina wanted excitement, wanted something more than what we had. She got it, briefly. Then she lost everything trying to keep something that was never real to begin with. I lost my marriage, but I gained something more valuable, the knowledge that I deserved better, that I was strong enough to walk away, that I could rebuild. The apartment's been good to me. I've redecorated, made it truly mine. There's no ghost of her here anymore, no shadow of what we were. Just me, my books, my work, and a future that's entirely my own to write. And that's the best revenge of all, living well, moving on, and never looking back. Thank you for watching the video to the end. YouTube may no longer suggest my channel to you, so subscribe to it to receive new interesting stories. You will also help the channel grow and improve the quality of its content. A playlist with other interesting stories that you can listen to is now displayed on the screen. You can also write in the comments what stories you would like to see on the channel.